Okay. Thank you to whoever told me I wasn't recording.
You're
Dang it.
welcome.
I appreciate it. Plus, you didn't get to hear me say crap, even though I just said it again. All right. So mostly I just said we're moving west because land is cheap and you can ranch and farm and mine. And we're concerned that there's no more places to move west, and we might not be great anymore because we can't move west anymore. Native Americans are probably wishing we had stopped moving west. I'm sure they felt that. Okay, all right. So apologies for not recording the first few minutes of class. Mostly where I talked about Frederick Jackson Turner's interpretation of the 1890 census. Okay, so we're going west, and this is going to be bad for Native Americans. Also, I think I mentioned we'd taken over all of Mexico we were going to take over, and we'd probably given up on taking over Canada at this point, even though, oh, we talked about, yeah, maple syrup and other things that are good about Canada. Hockey, they're very good at hockey. And I think maybe they have one good basketball team. I don't know. I don't know. Okay. Their women's soccer is not bad. Let's talk about what people did when they moved west. It wasn't hockey or soccer. It was farming, ranching, and mining. So we're going to talk about farming, ranching, and mining really fast, and then we'll get on to the good stuff, which is about the weekly question, which is about the Dawes Act and the ghost dance and that sort of thing. Native Americans. All right, farming, you know what that is. It's where you grow stuff and then you sell it. And it's a lot of stuff. So you need a whole lot of land to do this. The Homestead Act's passed in crud, I don't know, 1862, somewhere around there. It's in the 1860s. And it's encouraging people to move west by giving them or either giving them or requiring them to pay like $5 an acre pieces of land. So it's really cheap land in the West. And you're wondering, is it good land? Maybe, depends. A lot of it's going to be in northern Great Plains states where it's a little cold, but you can grow stuff. And the people who go there probably come from places where it's a little cold, but you can grow stuff. I usually, oh God, yeah, I would usually tell people, don't be offended by this, or be offended, it's up to you, that's where blonde people move. And I know, you know, in the modern era, we could all be blonde if we wanted to, you just dye your hair. But in the day, you know, back in the day, um, typically your coloring, your hair coloring, skin coloring kind of reflected where you lived. So blonde people were in cold places where they didn't get a lot of sun. Yeah. So people who were from places where you didn't get a lot of sun tended to move to similar places because they were used to it and they knew how to grow stuff there. So what I'm trying to say, and not saying very well, is a lot of Central, Eastern, Northern European folks move to these places from their home countries, or immigrants from those countries will go to these places. These places being places like Minnesota, maybe Montana a little bit, but Minnesota, Michigan, northern Great Plains states, Nebraska, Dakota's maybe kind of not exactly the same. Iowa, I don't think we're giving away land in Iowa, though. I know we're not. But those northern places where it's cold, and you grow corn or wheat, W-H-E-A-T. Okay, they grow other stuff too. They'll grow alfalfa and soybeans and some other things. But it's generally grain crops to either feed you or to feed other things you eat, like cattle. Okay. I've not ever owned a very large farm. When I started college, I started at what was Northeast Missouri State, which is now Truman State, which is on the border of Missouri and Iowa, which is a giant cornfield. And my college roommate's family had a corn farm. It was a very small farm, and I think it was probably 500 acres. So all I think about when I think of acreage is how long is it going to take me to mow the yard. So yeah, but apparently 160 acres, that's good for organic broccoli, or maybe to grow some grapes. It's not that big. So to have a very successful farm of this sort, you need probably thousands of acres. So people who moved and got their 160 acres were probably starting a farm and hoping to get more land. And they often bought that land from people who got out there and went, what the heck did we do? And why did we move here? So the less successful farmers sell their acreage to the more successful farmers, and then the more successful farmers become more successful, and the less successful farmers become bankers, and they own stores, and become history teachers or something along those lines. Almost everybody who moved west and got the land with the Homestead Act stayed in the West. 2/3 of the folks did not keep the land. Probably moved into a city or, community. Now, because farmers tended to go with their families, they do establish communities. So you're going to have schools and churches and the things that you have in communities, like little suburban kind of places, only without the big cities. So farming's more of a family thing. You take your family with you. To be successful, you need more than 160 acres. 2/3 of the homesteaders probably weren't successful, but millions of people, literally, I think it's, in your book's going to say, it's like 4 million families. So maybe it's 2 million families. And I was thinking it's like 4 to 8 million. It's a bunch of people. It's millions of people go west with the Homestead Act. Okay. And most of them stay. All right. So there you go. So sorry. They also don't fence in their farms because, I don't know, have you guys been to the Great Plains? Has anybody been to, the Great Plains? So I'm talking stuff north of Oklahoma. There's no trees there. So you can't really build a fence. So until they invent the barbed wire, yes, the barbed wire, there's not going to be much fencing there because you can't make a big picket fence like we have here with all the lovely pieces of pine or, no, it's not pine. What is it? Cedar, whatever our fences are made out of. They don't have trees. Okay. Now, once they start fencing in farms, it's also going to change the nature of ranching, which is our next topic. Okay. I'm going to assume because you all are in Texas, you all own a ranch or an oil well, one or the other, right? Okay. So ranching is kind of a thing in Texas, especially West Texas, like Lubbock, where the Texas Tech guy wants to go, or where I finished my undergraduate degree, San Angelo. Yes, Angelo State, the Mecca of knowledge. There's lots of ranches out that way. And there's some here too. So like some of you might live or have heard of that place, Steiner Ranch. That actually used to be a ranch. John. Okay. So ranching is when you raise cattle. The reason you raise cattle is because cows are cute? No, because you eat them. Okay, so these are for steak and hamburger and whatever else you make out of cows. All right, so in this era, they gave away some ranch land as well, not as much as the farmland, but they gave away some ranch land. This is a little more of the southwestern kind of thing, but also, there's a lot of ranching in Montana and Wyoming. So there's some in the Northwest as well. And I know there's ranching in California, but that's a little more farming and mining. And my home state of Missouri, but we're not giving away land there because it's already kind of taken up. So the land that's being given away is southwestern. And we're really thinking Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, maybe parts of Nevada and the other colder northern states I mentioned. So, excuse me, 160 acres, also apparently not big enough for a good ranch. These areas are semi-arid. It really doesn't rain much in the plain states, even the northern part where you can grow stuff. And the rain is sort of like the rain we get here. There's none for months, and then you get 10 inches. So, or sometimes here, there's none for 5 years, and then for 5 years it doesn't stop. So the rain patterns are really unusual, and it's either a whole bunch or none. So this land may not be very fertile all the time. And for ranch land, you got to have grazing land, at least at first. So you got to have part of it where stuff grows. 160 acres are given to you if you agree to irrigate the land. Same deal with these ranches. Most people not going to be successful with 160 acres, so they're going to buy more or maybe get their ranch hands to go register for more. This is a little less of a family thing and more of a dude thing. Now, if you're the ranch owner, you probably take your family. If you're the ranch hand, you're probably a dude. Yeah, if you're wondering, like, are there a bunch of women that work on ranches? I'm gonna go with no. That's what I'm gonna go with. There may be few. It's probably pretty rare. If you know about women who worked on ranches, probably be an interesting book for 5 historians to read. I don't know if anyone else would read it, but anyway. 160 acres, insufficient. Many of the ranch hands, that's where we're headed, are not white. Yeah, okay. Reasons? Because ranchers are really open-minded and said, you know what, we got to hire people of all different ethnic backgrounds. No, that's not it. That's an interesting thought. That's not it. It's because, here's some shocking stuff. In areas that used to be Mexico, lots of Mexican people live there. I know, I'm surprised as well. Yeah, so lots of Mexican Americans at this point, they've just recently become Americans, not because they moved here, but because the United States took over part of their country. And they'd been ranchers before, they're still ranching. Now, they may have had their ranch land stolen because maybe the new government didn't recognize the old titles. So someone else registered for title of their land and they got their ranches stolen from them. That's what happened at the King Ranch, where apparently they make some chicken that everyone in Texas likes to eat. But what I remember from my very brief Texas history class is that somebody stole the King Ranch from a Mexican American family that had owned it for generations. And if you study land patterns, especially in California and Texas, that's pretty common stuff. And it also mentions there are lots of African American ranch kind of dudes. And if you're wondering where there are a bunch of plantation owner ranchers, I'm going to go with no. I mean, there may be a handful in Texas and New Mexico and California. And don't tell me those are free states. I know they're free states, but here's the shock. Sometimes there's still slavery in free states. I'm shocked as well that people don't always obey the law and that laws aren't always enforced. I'm surprised by this, but there it is. Okay, African American men looking for careers after the Civil War. Not a whole lot of great career fields for you, especially if you're a former slave. So maybe you're going to start your own business, but that's kind of hard because it takes money. Maybe you're going to, I know what you could do, and people still do this, join the military because it's going to give you new opportunities. So people joined the military. Now, if you're a black guy in the military, you're going to be treated the same as white guys in the military during this time period. I'm going to go with a heck no on that. No, you're not. However, you are going to get paid. You are going to have some opportunities you wouldn't have otherwise. And guess what else? You're not living in Alabama. Okay, I'm not opposed to Alabama. I'm not. But if you're a black man in Alabama in the 1880s, that's not a good scene. So this gives you some opportunities you wouldn't have. So you're thinking, why is she talking about joining the military? She's supposed to be talking about ranching, because most of the African American soldiers are stationed in the West, and they're stationed near Native American reservations because their job's essentially to keep Native Americans on the reservation. So when their enlistment is up and they're already in the West, it's like, hey, guess what I did in the military? I rode horses. I have some skills that could be valuable for ranching. So a lot of those guys ended up being ranchers, what I'm saying. All right, so about half, 2/3 of the ranch hand kind of guys were not white. I don't think there's a large percentage of ranch owners who were black or Hispanic, but there were some. The number of people who work on a ranch is small, so people, whether they like each other or not, probably work together pretty well, because what choice do you have? Yeah, you got to get the stuff done and you got to keep each other safe. They also did the open range ranching, where you drove the cattle to market until the farmers started fencing in their farms. And then ranchers went, what the heck, we'll go along with this, and they fenced in their ranches and bought grain from the farmers to feed their cattle, and then eventually just stuck their cows on railroad cars and shipped them to market rather than drove them to market. And then pretty quickly they invent refrigerated cars so they can the cattle and then stick the carcasses on the refrigerated cars and then ship them to market. And then it mentions here that sometimes ranchers fought with each other, and that is true because they fought over common grazing land. And apparently it was cattle ranchers and sheep ranchers that like to fight with each other because cattle and sheep don't like each other? No. Because sheep are rude? Yeah, sheep are rude, apparently. When they graze, they don't just eat the grass, they pull up the roots of the grass and destroy the grazing land. How rude is that, sheep? So the sheep are hard on the grazing land, so the cattle ranchers didn't want them there because once the sheep ate the grass, it didn't grow back. So apparently the cattle ranchers would go and shoot sheep ranchers. Wow, that's so crazy. But that happened in West Texas. Yeah, probably Lubbock, Texas Tech. That's probably where that happened. And eastern New Mexico. I think that guy that has the Texas Tech thing knows that I'm giving him a hard time. All right. My niece went to Texas Tech. She turned out fine. She married a dude that went there. He seems fine. Okay. Yeah. Not as good as Angelo State, but not everybody can get in. You know what I'm saying. Mining. Okay. Mining. You know what mining is. You find gold, silver. I don't know how you do that. I really honestly don't know how they detected it during that time period. I'm sure they noticed there are certain sorts of rock formations or types of land where it's more likely to be. This tends to be hills, yeah, mountains, that kind of thing. So where they found gold and silver, California, gold, 1848. A whole bunch of people went in 1849, hence the 49ers, who are a football team. When I was a kid, they were very good. And then I think recently they've been good. And then in the middle of that time, I guess they were bad. Colorado, 59 is the silver rush in Colorado. Pikes Peak, that area. The Black Hills of North Dakota, there's gold there. And in the Klondike region, also gold. It's going to lead to millions of people moving to these places, especially California. California goes from like 5,000 to 1 million people within a year. So, and that's all about the gold. And that happens in 49. So that happens really quickly. People move into Colorado and the Black Hills, especially in the Black Hills. It disrupts Native American sacred lands and is going to cause some difficulty. And you know, not too many people go to the Klondike region because that's in Alaska. It's not close by. I think it's like 50,000 people. They didn't all go at once. But typically, individual miners do not make much money, and mining companies make a lot of money. That's typically true. Okay. And this is going to enhance some conflict, especially in Colorado and North Dakota, with Native Americans. Yeah, especially the Great Sioux Wars, that's the Dakotas. All right. Before we go on to the stuff that's really probably more directly related to the question of the day, we stop sharing. Do you guys have any questions you would like to ask? You could say them or type them in. Okay. All right then. Coke Zero, and we will get started again. All right, share the screen. And the question, the weekly question, we'll look at that first, and then we'll talk about it. So, discuss the experience of Native Americans in the Gilded Age. Now, if you start, I've graded a couple of these already. I don't think they're from your class. It's like, things did not go well for Native Americans in the Gilded Age. Like, no kidding. Tell me the era of US history where things go well for Native Americans. There's just not. You know, maybe the early part where there's not very many people who've emigrated to the United States and those people really need help from Native Americans, that's probably not such a bad time for them. After that, it's all downhill. Okay. Also, let me finish reading the questions. Discuss the experience of Native Americans in the Gilded Age. Be sure to include the Dawes Act in this discussion. Do that, please. How does the emergence of the ghost dance reflect the experiences of the Indians? What was the significance of Wounded Knee? And then I'll mention really quickly, because sometimes we talk about this stuff, what do we call Native Americans? What is the proper thing to call them? I'm going to go with Native Americans. That works pretty well. You're talking about a specific tribe. You could talk about the tribe by name. You could call Native Americans American Indians. I see that done with regularity by historians, so apparently that is fine. And the only thing that's a little tricky about calling them Indians is if you are not in the context of US history in the West, we might think that you're talking about people who emigrated here from India, because, you know, people do that in large numbers. So, Native Americans. Now, in my notes, I talk quite a bit about the Dawes Act. I don't talk much at all about the ghost stance and wounded knee. So you're going to have to look, you know where, your textbook. Yes, your textbook. Now, there's been some discussion about if the textbook is still accessible for free, and apparently not the 5th edition. The 6th edition, if you sign up using your ACC email, apparently that's a 21-day free trial. And then there's a link that a student sent, and then I shared with you. And at that link, you can download a PDF of the 6th edition. So that's free, but also it may not be available forever. So if you're planning to be cheap, I think I'd go ahead and download the book while it's available. Or, you know, sign up for the 21-day thing and then get another friend to sign up for the 21-day thing later. And you guys can share it. I don't know. All right. I think that's all I have to say. All right. Oh, some of you have said things in the chat, and then we'll get to the thing. The free one, I don't know. I sent out an announcement. So there's an announcement in Blackboard that should give you the link. Did you guys see the announcement? Did anyone see it? You guys look it up. Good. Okay. Good. All right. As long as you see it, that's perfect. Yeah. All right. So, and you guys see my notes, I assume. If not, somebody shout out and go like, no, I don't see the notes. Oh. So, Native Americans. And how much time do I have to? It's 3:26 and I've got 20 minutes. That should be about right. I could do it for longer. Okay. Native Americans. So Native Americans during this era, you know, most of the ones from the East have been pushed to the West at this point. You know, early days when we had Native American policy, you know, the earliest days, there's no policy because it's just, you know, we're not a country yet, and there's some colonies and we're trading with each other and things are kind of okay. And then it's like, dang, we need their land. So there's Native American wars, and mostly we just push Native Americans to, I don't know, somewhere west of Pennsylvania. Then when the United States becomes a country, we pretty quickly develop Native American policy. That starts as early as the Jefferson administration. And I know you're keeping score. So he's president number 3. So he's the 3rd president. So we have Native American policy that early. And the thought in that era is this idea of the one big reservation. And that's essentially this. Everything that's good in the United States is east of the Mississippi River. So everything west of the United States is crap, and Native Americans can have that. It's like they can have all the crap they want, and we'll keep the east side. Then they discover gold in 1848, and they figure out you can grow stuff in the middle of the country, and we pick up a whole bunch of land from Mexico, and it's like, I don't know if that one big reservation thing works anymore. So then all the Native Americans that have been pushed west of the Mississippi River, been like, hey, we kind of like your land, so we're going to give you the crappiest piece of land we can find, Oklahoma, and then maybe some desert regions of other parts of the country. So, you know, it's bad news when we stick you in Oklahoma. So there you go. All right. So you're reading about the process where we're sticking everybody in Oklahoma and a few other places too. So we're trying to get people Plains Indians to stop acting like Plains Indians. Okay, now how do you act like a Plains Indian? You hunt buffalo. It's a hunting gathering culture primarily. And the main thing that they're hunting, and they're not gathering buffalo, definitely not. But the main thing they're hunting is buffalo. And they wait until the herds go across their land, and then they follow the buffalo and do buffalo hunts certain times of the year. And their goal, of course, is not to kill all the buffalo, because you need some buffalo for next year as well. So, you know, they're fairly conservative. I don't know, conservative. They're not really environmentalists, although we tend to think of them that way. It's just practical stuff. I mean, if that's what you eat and you don't raise it, you're not going to kill it all. You know, you want to kill a certain age buffalo, but you don't want to kill the youngest ones. You don't want to kill the oldest ones. So yeah, you know what you're doing. You've done it before. Okay. So the U.S. government kind of looks at Plains culture and says, man, these dudes just follow buffalo herds, and that's all they're ever going to do. So you know what we need to do to fix that? Kill the buffalo. So they devise a plan to kill as many buffalo as possible. And the reason they're doing this is they really want to change or improve Native American culture by having Native Americans stay in the same place. They think this nomadic thing is not good for you culturally, because here's how you know it's not good for you culturally. The average American person doesn't do it. So we want you to stay in one place and have a farm, because that's what you do in the middle of the country. You don't run around chasing buffalo. So we're not going to talk you into it. We're just going to kill all the buffalo. So we do. I mean, we do a pretty good job of this. The U.S. government sends hunters. They pay hunters to come to the West and kill all the buffalo. And they have people who are stationed in the army shoot the buffalo, and then they sell train trips where you can shoot the buffalo out of the train cars. So it's a pretty concerted effort to get rid of buffalo herds, which they do by the middle 1880s. There's pretty much no buffalo herds. I'm not saying there aren't any buffalo, but dang, there aren't many. So much so that in the 20th century, when we devise an endangered species list, buffalo are on them. They're not anymore. Things are going better for the buffalo, and we have some herds. Not here, although deer around here, but no buffalo. That would be worse. Well, I mean, just if you hit one in your car, I'm not opposed to buffalo. But those are near Yosemite and in Montana, that kind of region. All right, so I know it's sad that the buffalo went away, but we got them back, sort of, intentionally. All right, but once the buffalo are gone, it's Native Americans don't have any reason to leave the reservation anymore. So U.S. government thinks, hey, we've accomplished some of our purposes by 1880 or so. So then they've really convinced, I guess, Native Americans that they should be farmers. But do you know what the dang Native Americans are doing? On one side of the reservation, it's where everybody lives. On the other side of the reservation, they have a big farm, and they all work on the thing together. Do we do that in the United States? No. So crud. They can't even farm the right way. So we have to do something to make sure that they understand you don't farm as a tribe, you farm with your family. So you have your own individual family farm, and you don't share with the neighbors, because that's not what we do. So they devised the Dawes Severalty Act. Okay, Dawes Severalty Act. All right. So let's see. We've said this, that culture is dependent on the buffalo. Improving culture, got rid of the buffalo. Okay, all right. I'll go, I didn't mean to not talk about the Battle of Little Bighorn, but we'll go back and catch that in a second. I'm sorry, because the Dawes Act is 1887, but we'll go back to the Battle of Little Bighorn. All right, Dawes Act, here we go. So the Dawes Act, passed in 1887, takes the land on Native American reservations and divides it up into individual family plots. And then they sell off the extra, and the extra tends to be the best farmland, where it says best arable acres. That means the land where you can grow stuff. They sell that to white farmers who are nearby, Part of the reason they want people to move right around the reservation is it's going to pin in the Native Americans. So we want them staying in one place. And if they got a whole bunch of neighbors, they're more likely to stay in one place. You got neighbors and military institutions near you, and no more buffalo. So you're going to stay in one spot. Okay, so the Dawes Act divides up the land. And so we say, like, okay, your family gets this 160 acres plus an extra 80 for this kid. And, you know, so they give them plots of land. And then they think, you know what, this still isn't going to be enough, because they're still going to act like Native Americans. They're still going to speak whatever their language is. They're going to wear their hair in some odd way that white people don't wear their hair. They're going to dress. They're not going to wear enough clothing. They're not going to dress right. So we got to fix this. How do we fix this? Because these people are just going to teach their kids to be just like them. So you take their kids away for a while. So they established boarding schools with the money that they made from buying or selling off the best farmland. So they make boarding schools. Boarding school is where your parents ship you off, or in this instance, the government shipped you off to live at a school, That's weird. Did I just make the notes turn blue? I did, didn't I? Sorry. Okay. All right. So you're shipping the kids off to go to school. They don't live at home anymore. And we still have boarding schools. You probably don't go to one. You don't live at Cedar Park. Do you live at Cedar Park High School? Those of you in band and football probably feel like you do, but you don't. You get to go home sometimes to your fabulous house. But these kids lived at school. The reason they took the kids away was to change them culturally. So when the kids went to boarding school, they had to dress like the average white kid. They wore more clothes. They had to cut their hair. Typically, men had longer hair and braids and stuff in Plains tribes. They cut it off and, you know, right at the ears. They didn't cut off their ears. They cut their hair at their ears. They told them, you got to speak English, and they would punish them if they didn't. And at school, they taught them how to be farmers. They taught them what crops to grow, how to fix the farm machinery, when to plant crops, reasonable prices to sell it, you know, math and mechanics and agricultural science, that kind of stuff. They also made them go to chapel a couple times a week, so they would be Christians rather than whatever heathen thing that they were, which was wrong with their culture as well. So you're training the little kids to be average white people. Then after 6 or 8 years, you send them back home, where they're going to become eventually new leaders in their community. They're going to tell their parents how to run the farm. They're going to teach them about Christianity and English and this sort of stuff. So that generation is going to change the culture because you've changed their culture. So there you go. Okay. The end result, you got a whole bunch of kids that don't really fit in anywhere. They'll write quite a bit about it because there's a lot of literature from that era from these kids. And they'll talk about how they don't fit into either world. They're not really accepted by their families back on the reservation. And certainly they don't fit into white culture because they look different and they're, you know, the way they speak English is different. And yeah, so they're not going to move to some city and try to fit in there, and then they go back to the reservation. That doesn't work very well either. So they kind of feel like they're between different worlds is what they talk about quite a bit. All right. Are you guessing that Native Americans are excited about the changes forced on them by the US government? Do you think yes or no?
No.
Thank you. I think you're correct. It's like, why are you even asking such a dumb question? Okay, that's not what you said at all. You said no, and I think you're right. So their response is the ghost dance. Since I don't have very much in the notes about the ghost dance, I'm going to stop sharing. However, this thing right here, the ghost dance, marks the end of organized Native resistance for decades to come. That could be part of why it's significant. I'm just saying. Just keep that in mind, okay? All right, let's talk about the ghost dance. Here we go, ghost dance. Okay, so the ghost dance is people dancing. It is. So it's a large group activity, ceremonial dance. It's sort of like, I don't know, do you in your culture, teen culture, do you have a ceremonial dance? Probably not. The only thing I can think of that's close is when I go to family weddings or activities, quinceañeras, that kind of stuff. Clearly my husband's side. Because my side's not fun. We don't do so much stuff that's fun. We just talk about politics, and I don't know why it's not fun. They always do the electric slide. I don't even understand that
Oh
because
my God, yes.
oh, yeah, okay, thanks. I don't get that. Okay. And I sort of think that's a weird cultural dance, but it's not really. Now, in the
Maybe like the
older
cha-cha slide too.
cha-cha slide, that's true. Now, I will stick up for my husband's family, at least the older generation, although it's like the 40, 50-year-old women that are always doing like the group something slide. But there's always a cumbia, and I'm down with that. I got that. That fits in, especially quinceañeras. You gotta have a cumbia. But anyway, this is something a little different because what they're doing with this is something a lot different. What they're doing with the ghost dance is they're trying to dance until they get a vision. And the vision that they want, because Native American, certain types of Native American religion, they want a vision, and once more people get that vision, it's more likely to actually happen in real life. So it's almost like a group prayer with dancing. It's kind of, that's the best I can do for you. But they're dancing until they get a vision, and here's the vision they want. I know you're waiting for this. They want a vision of the buffalo returning and the white men leaving. Now, buffalo returning clearly a sign they want their old culture back. They, the big no that you shouted earlier, they're no more white people culture. They want what they used to be. They really resent that the government has taken their culture away. So this is a big religious ceremony, protest kind of thing, affirming that they want a return of their culture. Now, it's not violent. They're not, blocking streets. They're not destroying property. And I'm not making comment about anything that's going on currently. I'm just saying that they go off to a spot on their reservation and a big group of them dance. Now, the troops near the reservation see this as subversive. So they're going to be, on guard, ready to go if something breaks out. So at Wounded Knee is, oh crud, I can't remember. I think it's Dakota. I think it's North Dakota, but I don't remember for sure. I'm sorry that I don't remember. But at Wounded Knee is a reservation. And there's thousands of people who come for this ghost dance. And as they're dancing, people are arriving, and the troops are checking them before they can enter the dance area. And they're checking them to make sure they don't have weapons. Now, depends on whose story you like, but either one guy they checked had a weapon, and when they tried to disarm him, the weapon went off, or the one guy shot at the troops when they tried to disarm him, or no one had any weapons, no one shot, it was a drum beat, and the soldiers mistook it for a gunshot. Whatever happened, the soldiers fired into the crowd and killed something like 180 people who were dancing that. So it really was, it was the essence of a peaceful protest, although it was it's very boisterous. I don't know if you've been to a powwow. My guess is you probably haven't spent a lot of time at one. Because of where I'm from Southwest Missouri. Joplin, Missouri is right next to the Oklahoma border. And, poor people wander around a little bit and they just marry other poor people. So I had a great grandmother who lived on a reservation. So I have relatives who dance in powwows still. So I've seen a few. I haven't done it, but it's loud. It is. It's really loud between the drums and the chanting and that kind of stuff. So, I suppose you could see it as subversive if you didn't really understand what was going on. The troops saw it as subversive. When they heard something they thought was gunshots, they automatically shot into the crowd. This is the last organized resistance to the US government. And it wasn't even, I mean, it wasn't a violent resistance, it wasn't an armed resistance, it was just truly a cultural statement that we don't like what you've done to our tribe. And after this happens, there are some hearings to determine if what happened was proper. There are some news stories about it. I know they don't have TV news yet. Don't give me a hard time. But you could look this up online. If you look up Wounded Knee, you'll be able to find, they took photographs of the dead people in the snow because it was cold. And it's pretty tragic stuff to see. And I think, let me think, the famous chief that was there that was killed was Bigfoot. Bigfoot. And apparently he was tall and had, big feet. So last organized resistance by Native Americans to the government for quite a while. You'll see the retaking of Wounded Knee in the 1970s. I wasn't there, but saw it on television, of course. And you'll read about it a little teeny weeny bit. There's not a whole lot about the Native American civil rights movement in your textbook. That would be something moderately interesting maybe for you to read about for your book review. All right, now there's more political stuff, but I think I'll just kind of pick that up next time and toss it in with the other things. So before we go, let me check the roll, although I think I got everybody for you guys. I don't think I was missing anybody. Oh wait, Abel Perkins. Abel Perkins here. And then the one guy who's never come, so he's not here, I'm sure. All right, you tell Abel he missed a fabulous class. So before we go, do you guys have any questions? Anything you want to ask? We got like 2 minutes. So you guys aren't in school yet? You guys go in 2 weeks, right?
Yes.
Okay. You like the guy, the spokesperson for the class today. Good job, Kate.
Some people go in 2 weeks, and then some are staying online. So it all depends.
I've
Oh,
seen a
that's
bunch
true.
of people in my classes in school already, so
Yeah, okay. So it's kind of depends on a lot of stuff, it sounds like.
Some classes, like athletic classes, you go in for, and then like welding and construction, you go in for as well.
That's true. It'd be hard to construct stuff online. Maybe dangerous. It's like just, try to weld in your backyard. That's probably not a good idea.
yeah, I honestly have no idea what's going on. I just know that I've missed 2 classes because I don't know what lunch I have. But
Oh dear. Now that sounds tricky.
there's
But
like
Yeah,
I-
we have 4 lunches.
Yeah, I'd heard about that because this may be time for me to stop recording. Do we need to record how many lunches you have?